Everyone, it's Tonya and I'm going to do a process video for you guys today, and we're going to use the memorabilia line that I shared with you last week from Teresa Collins. I'm starting out with this pattern, and the paper is called frames. The other side has a bunch of frames on it, so I guess this is the B side. I'm adding some gesso here in the center just to kind of lighten up that section where I want to put my photographs. And I'm kind of scraping it so that it has different levels of thickness. I really wanted that to, have some texture. So now I'm going to use some of the Teresa Collins Sweet Afternoon stamps. I'm going to use this border punch, and if you use your ruler edge to put those long border strips on, you can easily put it down on your block straight. And then I'm going to use the Color Box Caribbean Surface Z ink. This is the new ink that is permanent to stamp that image. And then I'm also going to use another stamp from the same set. This one says Take Flight, I believe, or it's Spread Your Wings, excuse me. And I'm using the chocolate from the Surface Z as well. So this one I think says Spread Your Wings. Now I'm going to take the butterfly from the same stamp set, and I had a piece of scrap vellum on my desk, so I'm going to use the Caribbean color to stamp out that butterfly onto the vellum. I'm going to do it a couple of times. I have an idea here. I'm not sure if it's going to work until we get going with it, but I cut those butterflies out. Now I'm taking a doily cut from scraps, and the MFT die, and I'm just going to place it there in that corner and then trim off the edges. Then I'm going to take my butterfly and bring him back. And I wanted him to have a little more depth since he's vellum, he's really fragile. So I'm going to put two, one on top of the other. But what I decided to do was take a pop dot and roll it so that it's dimensional and place it on either side of his body area. And what that will do is it will give the dimension, but it won't glue it straight down. So the top layer will have a little bit of a lift to it. It's a way to add dimension without the bulky foam pop dots. And then I'm going to staple it in the center, but instead of stapling it directly, I decided, since it's on the edge of the page, to staple it to the page that way so I wouldn't have to use any adhesive on it. Since it's vellum, it's colored, so you won't see it too much, but it's nice to not have to use adhesive. Then I'm going to take that doily edge and just kind of lift it a little bit to give it a little bit more tattered, depth as well. Back to the same stamp, I'm going to repeat the same process down at the bottom using the other half of the sentiment that's on the stamp set. So up at the top it says Spread Your Wings, and then down at the bottom it says Take Flight. And I'm just using the remnant left over from where I trimmed off that doily off the top. And again, I'm just going to lift it up. I didn't want as much of it to show down here because I wasn't going to use a big butterfly in this corner. So I wanted it to stay kind of smaller. And again, I'm using the chocolate ink from Surface Z. This is the permanent ink from Color Box. So now I'm going to use the decorative tape, and I think I need to pull in some yellows because there's so much blue going on this page, and I really wanted to kind of give a little weight to the top and the bottom. And it's a subtle thing, but I really love that it adds that little bit of layer to the top. And again, I'm just going to I want to keep it kind of a small detail. I don't want all of the tape to be up there at the top, or it will cover up my stamped image. So I'm fussing to get it straight, and then I'm just going to fold it over. I did end up going back to that tape and adding a little bit of glue behind it because I had touched it so much that it wasn't staying down like I wanted it to. And since this is a layout, I really wanted it to not peel up. And I love how that little bit of yellow is just a nice, it's just a nice touch. It just gives a nice break. So now I'm going to cut off from the note cards page. I'm going to cut off a couple of pieces here. I did not end up adding journaling to this layout because I felt like these cards kind of said everything I needed it to say. I had Brittany tell me her top 5. This is going to be a layout of Brittany. And today is her birthday, so I wanted to use that top 5 from the note cards. And now I'm taking a scrap from last week's layout. I'm taking this scrap piece and I'm cutting it down and to make a tag out of it. And I'm just going to use my We Are Memory Keepers corner chomper to chomp that corner, and I realized that that little bit of that hole didn't cut out. So, I mean, it wasn't corner chomping. So, I went back and cleaned up the edge. And I'm going to use my crocodile to put the hole in. I wasn't sure if I was going to use the holes, but I wanted them to be there just in case, since these were supposed to be tags. And I love the border around this, so I really wanted to make sure I used it to kind of give the border around my photographs. It became a challenge, and I didn't want that stripe to be at the top on both pieces, so I had cut it at an angle so that it would be at the bottom. But then I ended up going back and trimming it off because it just didn't work. So I made all of the stripes go towards the top. And the stripes that you see there are on the 6x6 pad. And it's the part that you rip out of the pad and you're supposed to trim it away. But I really like the contrast of that pattern on there, so I left it. And here I'm just cleaning up the edge of this note card. It says favorites, and then I added Brittany's name and her year. Since this is her birthday, I wanted to document in this point in her life what are her favorite things. And of course she said family first, music second, fish, which is so funny because she's totally obsessed with her betta fish right now. And I mean, we have 3 or 4 of them now. And then France, she is speaking French everywhere she goes. And the other one's the color purple, which I know this layout isn't purple, but I don't have any purple paper. And so I decided, since this was my favorites of Brittany too, these were some of my favorite pictures of her, I decided to go ahead and use my color palette. Now, I have the Post-it note page here, and I really wanted to use these banners, but it just wasn't working out for me. So I decided I end up not using that Post-it note there on the side. But I fussed with these for a long time, trying to get them all straight. I didn't know if I wanted them straight, if I wanted them crooked, but I wanted this to be tags floating across the top. And I knew I wanted to use this note card. It says, always be ready to have the time of your life, which is kind of advice a mom would give to a child who's 20, going off to college and doing her thing. So I really wanted to make sure I used that, and it is a nice balance of the black off to the left. But as you can see, I was really fussing with a way to make it all work. And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes these processes take me hours because I'll look at it and I'll go, oh, it's too much weight. I don't like that gap in the middle, but I really don't want to cover up the damask on that tag that's there on the in the center. So I really it was a challenging time for me to find a way to make all of that black work. And I ended up saying, you know what, just bite the bullet, get these things glued down, because once they're glued down, then you can play and really find a good placement for things. So I had taken another one of the 6x6 pads, cut it in half, and then made the other tag out of it. Normally when I purchase a collection, if they have a 6x6 and a 12x12, I try to get both because I love to use the 12x12s in my backgrounds, but I also like to use the 6x6 for my embellishments. And I do like to make a lot of my own embellishments with my die cuts and stamps and things. So it gives you a nice way to add the same patterns but maybe a little bit smaller. And if the collection comes in 8x8, I very well may pass on 6x6 and go 8x8. I don't know. It just depends on the collection. Now I ended up posting those crooked on purpose, and I think later on I went back and straightened them up. And the photographs that you see here are actually photos of my daughter that we did an impromptu photo session, and she was singing to me like opera and show tunes kind of thing, and she was bouncing that head around and doing all kinds of dancing in her chair, and these were kind of the fun shots that ended up not getting used for the purpose of the photo shoot. So they're some of my favorite photos, and I've been wanting to scrap them for a really long time, and I just love them. I love them. So here I go, fussing with that black thing again, trying to make it work, and like I said, I kept pulling it up, rotating it around, moving it around. Then I just decided to just bite the bullet and glue her pictures down. And of course I added some pop dots to them. These were printed at home on my home printer. I have an HP, I just bought a new HP 8600 inkjet printer, and I love it. You can use your phone. You can print from your phone to that printer, so it's really cool. Anyway, I printed these out on HP photo paper, and they were printed on one 4x6. So it's 3 photos on one 4x6. So that kind of gives you an idea of the size. So then I went ahead and folded up those edges of those tags at the top, and I decided to add a little bit of yellow back around those images. That would kind of help bring in the yellow that's at the edge of the layout. You're not going to see it too much, but it is there. And it does kind of help give a little bit of lift to those photographs without being totally obnoxious. There's some yellow over in the note card too, so it kind of helps to draw all of those elements in. Now, when I was digging around, I found these 3D geotags that say happy on them, and you can tell from the photo Brittany's a very happy child, so I decided to go ahead and use those as well, and they're from the Memorabilia paper collection. So I just love how those just add a little bit more dimension to the layering. And I came back, and I always use my scrap papers to cut these little doilies out because they're great stuffers for layers, and they're neutral. What I do is I cut them in half and make these little banners out of them. And those actually were from a 6x6 pad, and the back side was white and the front side was a pattern, and it was a pattern I knew I was never going to use again. So this is a great way to repurpose those 6x6 pads if you find that it's a pattern, it's just old and you've used it up and you just have a few pieces left. If the front side is white, the back side is white, cut them into doilies. So I'm just tucking those in and getting the placement right for those. And it takes me a minute to kind of fuss with them because I wanted them to be straight. Now here goes our butterfly. I decided that the one at the top needed a buddy, so I wanted to put it down here in the bottom to kind of cover up that negative space under that note card. My tiny attacher wouldn't reach that far, so I decided to just fake it. Use the tiny attacher to put the staple in the center and then glue it down. And I used my mono adhesive for that. And then I decided to go ahead and take this doily and just tuck it up at the top just to kind of soften up that tag a little bit because there was so much of it showing. And I found this banner in the 3D stickers as well. It says, live a happy life. And Brittany, I believe, will always be happy in her entire life. She's one of those kids who just likes to bring happiness. Now I'm going to take my gold, this is the iridescent bright gold from Liquitex, and I'm just dropping it all over the place. And then I take my hands to make the splatter. I just kind of thump a couple of them to make them splatter. I thought this would be a great way to bring that yellow back into the layout as well, but be shiny and kind of take all of these dull patterns and brighten them up a little bit. And then I found this little sticker that says joy. I cut it out. I fussy cut it from one of the pattern papers, and I thought joy just kind of went up there with that happy and balanced off that black over the top of the photograph really well. And now I have one of the Tim Holtz crowns, and I had cut the loop off that makes it into a charm, and I didn't like that little divot in the center. So later on you'll see me add to that too. But I thought the crown just kind of added that topper at the top to fill in that black negative space. Now you can tell I've been fussing with this all day, and here we are at nighttime and my lighting is bad. I forgot to turn my overhead light on. And I have one of those Tim Holtz word ideology word plates, and it says "Live the life you've imagined." So I kind of feel like the journaling in this layout is happening in all of the elements, because these are all the things I would want to say to her. And I just took some twine and wrapped it around the word plate, and I'm just gonna, it's gonna kind of help ground those tags a little bit, I think. Just pulling it across those. So I just used some tape to tape that twine down behind that tag, and I really like how this just kind of anchors those tags down to the layout, and it just kind of gives another little bit of softness with the twine. And I'm just using my mono adhesive to tack that down, and I don't know if it'll hold or not, but it should hold fine with the twine holding it down. Now I'm taking an EK Success labels punch, and I'm just going to punch off a small section from the paper collection, and I'm going to use my Martha Stewart scoreboard to score, just a little spot to fold over those tags. I decided I didn't like those holes because I didn't want any kind of ribbon or anything hanging off the top. And the best way to cover it up would be to use those as like a tab. And then I love the yellow star that was in the buttons from the collection, but there's only one. So what I ended up doing was putting twine between the button there, and it took me a long time to get that twine through that hole. It was late and I was so tired, but anyway, I got it through and decided to put it on one of the tags. And then I was like, oh, I needed two of those in the same color because none of the other colors were working. So I went to my 6x6 paper pad, pulled out the paper that has the same pattern as the yellow one, and I just glued the black star on upside down, and fussy cut out around it. So I have two of them with the same color, and then just use my paper piercer to pierce the holes, and then put more of the twine in the center of that one as well. The things we do. So I get my star on there, and I just love how that looks. It just kind of all came together. It brought on all the yellows, and it's just a good spot color. So I'm looking at it going, I did this off camera. I added those sequins from the collection, and I just kept looking at it from off camera going, I'm not sure if I'm done or if it just needs a little something. And I decided that it did. It needed just a little bit of something. So I went and found a little teeny tiny little small piece of bling that I'm going to put at the top of the crown. I didn't like how the crown, when I cut the topper off, it didn't, it just had a divot in it. So I'm using my quick stick, and this one is from Quick Cuts, but I know Silhouette makes one as well, to put down that little piece of bling at the top of the crown. And it still just needed a little something. So I grabbed, this is from the paper collection, and one side of it's craft and black, the other side's black and white. So I decided to use the craft in black because the paper that I have for the tags has kind of got a craft look to it. And I love how this border strip just kind of balances off the happy that's above the photographs. It just kind of helped to anchor everything down in the center section there. And I love that it had that little scalloped edge on the bottom. And then I decided there was a little hole at the top here between those tags, so I decided to tuck up the extra piece that I just cut off right there between those tags, and it just kind of framed out everything and just gave it a little balance. But there was still needing something more. I don't know, it just wasn't sitting right. So I decided we have two butterflies, we need a third, and I didn't want another big one because they were just too big. So I decided to take my Martha Stewart punch and punch from the scraps of that vellum piece and just use that same Caribbean blue from a color box and color those babies up. and I did the same technique on them that I did on the two larger ones. I just stapled them in the center and then glued them down. I wish I was more organized with how I put things together, but truly this is part of the creative process for me. I don't pre-plan anything. It just kind of happens. And I let it happen because to me, when you pre-plan it, it just kind of takes the fun out of it. I really like thinking off my feet, and sometimes these process videos take me days to put together because I will do a little something, go away, come back, do a little something. And there are times where I even take and photograph the layout with my phone, walk away from it, and look at it on my phone because it gives me a different perspective. And after I did that, of course, I came back and said, oh, it just needs a little something under here to soften it up a bit. So I got some lace that has like a little scalloped edge on it. It's a very dainty lace. You could probably not see it in the video very well, but um, I just tucked it in underneath the photos, and then I decided it needed a little more up at the top. I don't know if you guys are realizing it or not, but I'm a very symmetrical person. If you do it to one side, I like to do it to the other side. So a lot of my layouts will have a lot of symmetry to them. I know I like to work in the rule of thirds as well sometimes, but I really like balance. But that's a personal preference for me. And I decided that those big sequins needed a few small ones, so I just went into my stash and found some little small gold sequins that I went ahead and added in. It made it look like a little more like confetti. That's my little gum eraser. I had gotten a little spot of glue on the paper, so I got it up. Thank you guys for watching. Here are some close-ups of the layout so you can get a better feel for what it looks like. I hope you enjoyed this process video. Please leave me comments.